it's crazy watching how the world has changed so fast. You know, even before this happened, I felt like every single week you didn't know what the week would bring. And then last week, that was, spinned upside down, turned upside down.
I've thought for a long time what in the world would make sense to talk to you about. And I think I'm in the process maybe of coming to the conclusion that I really just want to hear what you have to say.
I got a lot to say, that's for sure. A lot, I had my own podcast and I was perplexed about what to talk about on the podcast. You know, I I had to spin it about life versus just photography because I feel like, like I felt during 9/11. During 9/11, I lived in New York City. And, it was at that point in my life, especially, it was just about work, 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 work. And I had people who were, in that same mode who I knew who were friends of mine who worked in the tower, who
Yeah.
left who left their jobs, walked downstairs, and then had the idea about, oh, I've got to get this work done because whether they were in the other tower, went back up and never walked out again. There are things in life that come out of nowhere that upend our life, and we have to deal with life. And that's been this entire year from the virus on. There have been so many things that have just made us stop and pause. And this is definitely one of those moments.
It just keeps, I feel like we're like in the middle of a snowball almost. Um, it's getting bigger and bigger and more chaotic and more important at the same time. Are we reaping what we've sown?
Absolutely. It's funny. I almost mentioned that same phrase when talking to some friends today. I use that phrase a lot. You reap what you sow, but it's not used in reference to this use. It's about work.
Right.
You reap what you sow. You work hard. You advertise. You market. You
Yeah.
put all this time into like studying your craft, and then you reap the benefits of that. But that works in every single way. In every single way, not just photography. In life in general, it's a universal law. You reap what you sow. Period. And it
What?
feels like that now in America. It hits me differently because I am African American. Um, I live with this daily, so I understand it from a different point of view. It's funny because since this happened, I've gotten so many calls from friends, um, all over the world. Of course, from America, friends in Europe, friends in Asia. I mean, everybody wants to hear my opinion, um, and that's because in many cases, I may be their only African American friend.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to hear my take on it. Um, I have one friend here I live in Japan, in case many people don't know, but I live here in Tokyo. Been here for 4 years. And that kind of racism that people experience in America, people don't understand here. Um, and I have a friend here who I was trying to explain that to, and she just couldn't understand a lot of things because they don't have the history of it.
Right.
That makes the huge difference.
Right. So are you saying that in Japan, like you're in daily life, you have a different sense and a different feel just
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. I'm not saying that there's not racism in Japan,
right.
discrimination in Japan. There
Right.
is, but not on the level, not even 2% of the level that is in America. Since I moved here, some of my good friends have said, you seem different. Your work seems different. These are the people who really know me. And I was shocked even hearing that from some of my good friends. They're like, we can tell that you are happier. And it's true. It's the small things. Before this happened, I was coming back to the States about once a month on average. Like last year, I came 11 times.
Oh,
Year before that, I came 10 times.
yeah.
This year, I came every month until the virus hit. And that's been my life since I've moved here. So I get to see this back and forth. This I get this perspective of seeing life here in Tokyo, and then life the moment I step off the plane in America. When you're living there all the time, you take it as being another day and you get used to certain things. When you leave, it really hits you. My first,
This is resonating with me a bit. When you're in an oppressive environment, and I'm not going to get into how oppressive or anything specific. I'm intentionally painting with a broad brush when I say this. When you're in an impressive environment, there's like a kind of an acclimating, so to speak. And so what I'm hearing you say, and I'm asking more than anything, is that you can almost get used to it to a point where it's not like you're not affected by it, but you really see it, or you see it clearly, or certainly feel it clearly when you're not in that environment anymore. So when
well,
you go back to Japan after spending time here, or even when you come back here from there, it's that much more apparent. Is that fair to say?
somewhat. I don't think you ever get used to um,
Mm,
discrimination or
sure,
racism, no matter what. You never get used to it.
sure.
You're always aware of it. The thing about growing up in America, I was born in New York, raised in South Carolina, moved down south when I was 7 years old. And I think that was the first time ever that it hit me about, differences. In New York, it's a melting pot. So if you grow up there, you see people from all over the place, from all over the world. And that was my first 7 years of my life. When I moved down south, it was a very different reality at that time. I was born in '63. I'm 57 years old now. Um, it's very different living here. There's this, it's like a fog of racism that exists
Fog.
in America. So if you can imagine this fog and you get used to living in the fog, and then you all of a sudden come out into the sunlight and you experience that, that's what it's like living here. You 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 don't have any, I think fear is the wrong word because it's not fear. It's this constant feeling that at any point somebody could say something, or you could be, or not say something. Um, I really, really identify with the situation that happened in Central Park.
Yeah.
That type of racism, discrimination happens every single day, more than the very blatant stuff of, like, somebody being killed. It's those small things that happen every single day. Um, for that to happen in New York, the most diverse city in America, shows how systemic racism is in America. It's deeply inbred in the culture, and people, they deal with it whether they like it or not. It's another story. There's this denial about it, of course, um, but it's there. It's in every industry, definitely in our industry. I started my career as a photo assistant in New York City, assisting some of the best photographers in the world. And at that time, when I began my journey in photography, there weren't many people of color who worked as photo assistants. Now, the assistant is the person who's basically the trainee at the bottom of the totem pole. But I worked in the industry, and very often I never saw somebody who looked like me. And I got used to that. And then as I evolved to a working photographer, clients were shocked to see me, um, on both sides, on the client side and on, if I'm shooting a celebrity, people were shocked to see me as well, because you just didn't see people of color who were working as photographers. And that was a while ago. I've been shooting now for over 30 years. And sadly, there still aren't a lot. Um, America's in a place where it needs to have a wake up call. That's been brewing for a long time. I think people got to the point of being comfortable. I mean, you could exist, you could have a great life, you could do, you seem to have a lot of freedom to advance your career, to have wealth, have all these different things, but there's still this this fog that exists. And when you walk out that fog, it changes things. When you walk out the fog and you go somewhere else and you see that what real opportunity is about, like, here in Japan, if you are talented, period, you can do very, very well. That's not the same in America. And it's sad to say that. You know, if you work very, very hard in America, um, you may or may not be successful.
Mm,
It could be done on a lot of different factors.
mm.
And no, it's not just in America, that's in a lot of places too, but there's a different level of it, um, at home.
I saw a post from a man of color that rocked me. He said that there's a picture of him walking with his dog and holding his daughter's hand, and I think she's probably about 8, so close to my children's age. And he said that he doesn't go walking in his neighborhood alone. He said that essentially he brings his daughter to protect him.
I understand that. I absolutely understand that. And that's funny. See, these are small things that you don't think about,
No,
but
I
here
would have
here
never
in
thought about
Japan,
that.
I know that one very well. I would never do that in places in America just because somebody might think, I'm threatening. It's in the back of your mind.
That's what he was getting at.
Yes, it's in the back of your mind, absolutely. But here, like even last night, I went out late, for a walk by myself. It's late, late at night. And in Japan, people come back home late. A woman can be walking by herself in a dark street, come walk toward me. Don't think about, you know, fear. It never crosses their mind. They can say hello to me, whatever. That would never happen in America. If I'm walking it down the street at night and say a woman who's not African American or sees me, right away they're going to think, okay, am I safe? Should I walk on the other side of the street? Those things don't happen here. And those are the things that little by little make this little impression and pull us further and further away and cause this divide that we've had all these years.
I have
It gets to the point where it becomes like this tipping point, and it turns into what we have now.
right. Yeah. I have two children of color. I don't know if you knew that, but I do. Um, my daughter's from Nepal. My son is from Thailand, and it's coming up more and more. My daughter's 10. My son is 7, and we're talking about skin color, and
Yes.
they're asking questions like my and we talk about it at this point. Um, we're talking more and more about racism and what that is, and how people treat people differently because of what they look like sometimes. And we even talk about with my daughter, because you're a woman, sometimes you'll be treated differently. Like we're 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 trying to teach them. I want to teach my children well, and I don't always know how to do it. Even with what I said to you earlier, like I feel like I just misspoke when I said you get used to it, and how could you get used to something like that? I don't, and it's difficult because I I don't know. I have no idea what it's like. I can't I can't imagine the fog that you're talking about. I believe you that it's there for you, and I'm concerned that at some point it will be there for them as they get older and they understand more, and they see it more, and they're starting to comprehend more. Um, I don't know how to. I want to prepare them, and I don't know if I know how to do it.
I mean, education is powerful, period. Making them aware of the world in general is important for sure. Making them understand, the power that they have, and the power is in being different. I talk about that a lot as a photographer. Your superpower, it really is in using your fingerprint, and we all have that fingerprint. Whether it's how you look, how you view the world, we all have this way that's unique to us, and that's a superpower. Some people try to take that away and make you feel like you need to be like everybody else, but you don't. So the sooner you get used to accepting what others may see as whatever, the better you'll be. The superpower is really being secure in who you are. And I think that's the most important thing you can teach any child, to be, self-sufficient, to really understand their value as a human being first and foremost.
How do you address the part that when you start talking about things like this and they start understanding that the world can be a scary place, how do you try to talk about it in a way that doesn't terrify them?
I've thought about that a lot because I've talked to my nephews and nieces over the past few days. I've talked to friends who have younger children. Um, it's scary because this hasn't happened in since I was a child, and I don't
Right.
remember it as a kid. I have no memory of this as a kid, even though this was for sure memories that would traumatize you for sure.
Yeah.
But either I blocked it out, but I
Sure.
don't remember it. How do you talk about it? Children are more resilient than we know.
Hmm.
That's for sure. You can't hide it. You can't sugarcoat it. And it's funny, kids they're so honest.
Yeah. Yes.
They're so honest. and we lose that. And you start teaching them empathy, which is something that has been lost. You teach kids empathy. You teach them the golden rule, which I believe with all my heart would solve so many of the world's ills. You teach people how to, simply treat somebody how you would want to be treated.
Yeah.
But in our society today, there is this thing about, wanting to do better than the person next to you. Now, competition's great, but there's a point when it can really ruin society. And I think any extreme is bad. And we are almost in that, we're in a selfie age. The selfie age has brought a lot along with it.
Hmm.
I mean, just selfish, selfie, all these things that come along with it, these are not, positive terms.
Hmm.
How we should not rejoice in, that we have so much more than the next person.
Yeah.
This is a point of being, of course, there are some people who do very well, some people who do not as well. But the disparity between rich and poor is, or not even rich and poor, freedom and the lack of freedom,
Yeah.
or these things can destroy society. And sadly, that's what we're seeing. And I think the worst part about it is the denial. I love listening to podcasts, and I've listened to a lot over the past few days. Um, and a lot of it has been hearing people in denial. And it's sad. It's a process. I heard somebody talking about, I love Seth Godin. I play his, podcast a lot. I read his daily emails. Always great, great stuff. Always great, great stuff uh, to make you stop and think. And he said something, in one of his um, emails or podcasts about people refuse to believe when they're wrong.
Mm.
And that's true. People never, even if it's all the evidence speaks to the opposite, nobody wants to be wrong.
Yeah.
Not wrong about how they feel, not wrong about their
Right.
beliefs, not wrong. It's just how we're made. Um,
How do you handle it? How do you handle when you're in a situation, when you find yourself in a situation like that, and denial is pervasive, and you have this, you have this golden rule that I also embrace. But if somebody's in denial, what can you do? How do you approach that? Or
it's very
or
hard to. It's actually almost impossible to change somebody. And the arguments people have, they're almost arguments don't change things. People will only change when they want to change. No matter what the discussion is, people will not change based on you arguing with that person over your point and them arguing over their point. Because in both cases, neither one are hearing the other. They're
right.
just, putting their point out there. And that's what we see a lot happening on social media and the news, on CNN, on, TV. You're seeing everybody arguing their point and trying to get everybody else to see what they feel and or imagine what they feel. And no one can imagine what you feel like. They can see it on TV and kind of get an idea, but it's impossible for them to imagine it if that's not their reality. And nothing you can say can make them. I feel that way anyway. What has to be done is there has to be a point when there's a shakeup. The shakeup is what makes people stop and really think. And that's what's happening now. There's a shakeup. And it's not, I mean, there have been some bad things that have happened for sure. And I hate to have seen all the things that have happened around looting and the rioting. And I hate to see, how peaceful protests have been marred by those situations and the attention that those situations get, it still doesn't take away from the problem. And the
Right.
problem must be addressed no matter what. Because if we go back and we just let things settle down and get back slowly to the way they were, it just boils up again until this happens again. And maybe it happens worse next time. We have to solve a problem, or the problem comes back and it bites you in the butt again and again and again.
Yeah, and like you said, sometimes worse and worse and worse.
I mean, this could not happen at the worst time. Having, this happen during COVID, it's like there's this energy in.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't believe in this whole thing of you know doom and gloom. I believe we have this power um, to change things. I mean, I have to believe that. No matter
Right.
how bad things get, I believe that we have this power within all of us to stop, see what's going on, and change it, to make a decision to change what's going on. There's always that decision. There's always, and no matter what happens in your day, there's always this point when you have to make a choice about going one way or the other. And it's good to have this point when you have this self reflection, when you stop, really look in the mirror, and ask those hard, difficult questions. Have those hard, difficult conversations with friends. I've had those for a lot of friends lately um, who want to talk. I had one friend who sent me an email yesterday. I've known her forever. She's like saying, Matthew, have I ever said anything offensive to you?
Yeah.
And, you know, we're good friends. We haven't seen each other in a long time, but we're good friends. And we can have open conversations and really heartfelt conversations. Those are hard to have. Um, People walk around and are scared to say something, scared to talk. But you can, whether people talk or not, you can feel the energy. Every person of color can feel the energy when you walk in a room.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in many of those rooms. I've talking to large groups of people at conventions where I'm close to being the only person of color in the auditorium.
Yes.
I can feel
Yes.
the energy in the room.
Yes.
Uh, and very often, it's not what's said. It's what's not said.
Right. Yes. I believe
Sometimes
that.
that silence is louder than anything else.
The other thing I was thinking about you that stood out to me. First of all, neither one of us obviously had any idea that this was going to happen.
Yeah.
Um, Certainly not when we were talking about reaching out to you a few weeks ago initially, and now here we are. But even before this happened, I thought to myself, Matthew Jordan Smith, and I talked to my wife about you because I usually do. If I have somebody that is, significant in the industry that she knows, I ask her, what do you think about when you think about Matthew Jordan Smith? And it was a kindness, like a kind, gentle soul. And I said, I have never heard anyone ever say anything bad about Matthew Jordan Smith, because people talk, people say whatever they say. And this is not to take away from what you just said. In fact, it made me think about it because of almost like this juxtaposition, how you can be in a room. And I've been in that. I've probably been one of the people in that auditorium where you're up on stage, and if there's 1,500 people in that room, there might be 13 people of color, and you're on the stage. I say what I'm saying because it makes me think, here is a man who is in this upper echelon of people from a social standpoint where nobody has anything bad to say about him. You are like a person that's beyond reproach, which is extremely rare these days in my circles. And yet you can be in a room like that and still be in a fog Like the fog is there.
Absolutely there. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I am sad about that.
I mean, I don't mean to say that that's all the time because it's definitely not. You know, there are times when I'm in a room, especially if it's a younger crowd, where that's different. Um, it just depends on, you know, where you are, but that element can be anywhere,
I don't want to
and
be
it often
part of that.
is.
I don't want to be part of that fog. I
I
don't
would
want to
hope to
be.
think that a lot of people wouldn't, but if that was the case, we wouldn't be where we are right now. I had to stop looking at Facebook and all the comments. I can't look at them anymore because people can say when you're hidden behind a computer, people say what they feel, which is good because you get real, honest, you know, opinions that you would not get if you know you were face to face. It tells the true story,
Have you had, I
and
mean, did you have to walk away because you had people that you didn't realize felt the way they felt, even?
absolutely, I had one friend who I've known for a long time who was making these arguments, and I was so upset looking at them. I wanted to call him right away. I didn't. I uh, I closed Facebook and haven't opened it since. You know, not to go through it, just to go to my personal pages and but not to look at any comments because the comments show you exactly why the country is where it is right now.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You reap what you sow, and you see the fruits of the labor by just looking at social media.
What in what in closing would you say to people that are starting to maybe see things from a different point of view? What would you say to them regarding moving forward now? Because here we are at another season, another time where things have festered, and then it blows up the way that it has,
Yes.
and maybe and and may I guess my hope is that people see things maybe from a different perspective. Maybe this is what it takes, right?
I
Maybe
know.
stuff like this is what it takes for some people. And for those people whose maybe minds have been opened even a bit to close out, what would you have to say to them moving forward now?
I think the thing that we all have to get past is being quiet. I think we have to be open to having real conversations that will definitely not be comfortable. Not arguments, but real conversations where, number one, where we listen um, to number one, listen for the problem. Number two, work toward a solution to fix the problem. Um, if it's just this back and forth, nothing ever happens. We've seen that argument happen over and over again in other areas, like you know, gun control in America. There are things where those arguments they lead to nothing. There's no resolution. Um, this can't be that. There can't be at a place where there isn't any resolution. There has to be some way to have conversation. There needs some to be some discourse where we find solutions. I think back to you know to the 60s,
Mm.
and before. I think back to Gandhi, I think back to Martin Luther King and how things happened. You know, there needs to be a voice of reason that we don't have to talk in a manner that's not going to agitate, but going to heal.
Mm.
Our country needs healing
Mm.
badly. No matter where you sit on what side of, left or right, whatever those things are, our country needs healing. How we fix it? God knows I don't have all the answers at all. But I know we need to be able to have discussions, because if we can't do that, you go nowhere.
Mm.
So for those who are open, if you can please not stay silent, have conversations, uh, real conversations. They may not be easy. As a matter of fact, I'm sure they won't be easy, but we need to have them. And when you have those conversations, don't try to change somebody's mind, because that's very hard to do. People don't
Yeah.
change unless they want to. And
Yeah.
even when people want to change, that's still very, very hard.
Yeah.
Think
Yes.
about that.
Yeah. Just wanting to change doesn't get you there.
No, no, it does not. It does not.
Uh, I am humbled and honored that you would take the time to do this. I didn't know what to expect. But I really appreciate you taking. You're in tomorrow, which is kind of funny.
Yes, I am.
People don't put that together right now. It is the third for me, and it is the fourth for you.
It is the fourth for me.
You are in the future. Thank you for this, Matthew Jordan Smith. Thank you for this. Um, I look forward to seeing you at the next convention that we're both at.
Being there again, I'm
Um,
looking forward to that. I mean, we all are, being on the other side of this thing, you know, in every which way, being on the other side of this pandemic, being on the other side of this situation in America, just being on the other side, past all of this, is what we are all looking forward to. I know. Hopefully, we'll get there soon on
amen.
all fronts, so we can get back to, you know, running our businesses, building our friendships, hopefully in a better, smarter way, something that's truly sustainable, not just now or for 5 years, but for generations.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We need that. We need that, because the way things are will only lead to the way things are right now going forward. We have to change that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Um, Now I will let you go to sleep as I start my day. Have a good one,
Sorry
man.
again for yesterday. I kicked myself in the morning. I woke up this morning. I saw that email. I'm like, well, technically it is.
We're literally we're literally having this conversation in 2 different days. It's a first for me. It's a first.
I do it all the time, and I shouldn't have made that mistake. I'm
Well,
like,
I know, right, right,
somebody in the
right.
States or
Well,
in Europe, and
thanks, dude. Have a good one.
thank
Until
you.
next time, I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bless you and your family. Be safe. Stay safe.
Thank you. You too. You too.
All right. Bye.